Hello, everyone. Welcome to the last Best Hope for Conversation, a Babylon 5 podcast for the last time for now.
So the
But
last best hope for
yes, the
conversation.
last Best Hope for. I am Jesse Jackson, and joining me to talk about this on this last Babylon 5 episode is Karen, you just heard,
Hello.
and Lou.
How do everyone?
And I think I'm going to start with the road is long and seeming without end. And days go on, I remember you, my friend. And though you're gone, my heart's been emptied, it seems. I'll see you in my dreams.
Oh,
Bruce Springsteen, I'll see you in my dreams, a song he wrote on 2020. This is going to be, I think there's two ways to talk about Babylon 5, The Road Home, which was a direct-to-video movie that was released in 2023. I think you can look at this as a film, or you can look at this as an encore. And I think we'll end up doing both. But as someone who went into this with great anticipation, knowing that we were getting new Babylon 5, knowing that JMS, I was part of his Patreon page at the time. He's since changed, and I need to figure out if I'm going to be part of his new Patreon page. He was very happy about it. He had shared many good stories. He said that when Bruce Boxleiter came in to do the commentary, he quit talking at times because he was so busy watching the film. So I just loved it because I did feel like I was just back with seeing old friends. Karen, quick thoughts on the movie.
Yeah, first of all, it was created and distributed by Warner Brothers, and it is very much in the vein of like the Batman one-shots that they do. It's the same animation style, and I like to think of it as one of those like one-off movies. It's almost 100% alternate universe, right? Because he moves around alternate universes and things like
Right.
that. So, in the vein of that kind of thinking, I thought it was really good. And there were nits I had with it, but overall, I enjoyed it very much. So,
Lou?
It felt very much like a combo clip show and love letter to the fans type of movie. So, in the scheme of things of the larger narrative, I don't think it did anything new to push the boundaries of the show or anything, but it was, considering the time passage between the last episode and this, I think it was a nice callback to characters, especially to the actors that a lot of the actors that portrayed the characters that are no longer with us. So from that perspective, I enjoyed it. As a story, it was okay. I do have to give high marks to the animators. I thought that the look of the cartoon was spot on. All the background stuff looked fantastic. Babylon 5 looked great. And I thought most of the character designs were pretty close to the real life counterparts. I was impressed on that level, as well as the voice talent, especially for the actors that are no longer with us. I thought from a productions quality standpoint, it was really well done.
Yeah, I agree. I did read that Joe went to everyone who would be involved and said, if any one of you thinks this is disrespectful to the people we've lost, I will drop it. And they said no. Now, part of me wonders why, heck no, I'm not going to say no to a gig.
Exactly.
right.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the cynical part of me. And I think they did it well. I don't think the animated Jakar looked as good as I would have liked, but everything else looked pretty good. And I agree, the voices, especially the lady who did the Lynn, I thought was really, it sounded like Mira Farron to me.
Mm-hmm.
Do you mind? Can I talk
Please.
about the voice acting?
Yes, please.
I'm actually the opposite of you. I wasn't sure about the Delenn actress.
Okay, interesting.
I thought she did a passable job. But
Hmm.
to me, Mira Furlan had a fairly strong accent and she
Yeah.
downplayed it quite a bit.
Okay.
But I got the gist of it. That actress, Rebecca Reedy, also played young Sheridan, which I found interesting. Of course, we lost many of the actors, and the voice acting they got for this, I thought was stellar. Number one on my list would be Phil Lamar. He did the voice of Stephen Franklin. And if I was told that it was actually Stephen Franklin, I would believe it
Okay.
because he was so spot on in his voice acting. And second would be Anthony Hansen, who did the voice of Garibaldi. Even though he didn't have a lot of lines, when he did, it truly sounded like Jerry Doyle. There were a lot of standouts here. I was sad that they didn't get Jason Carter because he is still alive for Marcus, but it was one line,
Yeah.
and to pay him to come back to do one line, I get why it was prohibitive. But otherwise, wow, the acting was amazing. The guy who, Paul Goyette, he played Zathras, who had a big part, and I thought he did a
Yeah.
good job with that. But he also did the voice of Sinclair, and he did great with that as well. And those are two incredibly different voices.
Hmm.
So I want to give a huge shout out to voice actors in general and these in particular because they carried a huge load in this. And yes, I said huge load. Sorry.
It's all right.
I think they really carried the movie. Bruce Boxleitner obviously had everything on his shoulders in this,
Yeah, he did.
but overwhelmingly, it was voice actors doing the bulk of this movie. And wow, I can't say enough about the talent that they got for this.
Okay.
So
Any thoughts after that, Luke?
No, I'm just impressed that Karen did that much research.
I'm
um
very happy.
I'm a huge fan of voice acting in general. I have quite a few people that I interact with that read audiobooks,
Mhm.
romance audiobooks in particular, but like I talk to one of my favorite voice actors. We have like a group that we all talk and he will do Zooms with us and all kinds of stuff.
Nice.
And I know how daunting it is to do voice acting because people judge you compared to what they
Yeah.
think the voice should be. And it was just stellar, I thought. And also was completely sincere about Phil Lamar here doing Stephen Franklin. But Phil Lamar is incredible. He does voices on so many things. He's one of the bass voices on Futurama.
Okay.
And like a million other, he's done a lot for Warner Brothers. To see him in this, I was very excited. And of course, you don't hear Phil Lamar in his voices, you hear the voice. And I think it's a pretty thankless job. Not a lot of people give you props for, I mean, can you guys name people that have done other than like Kevin Conroy, who did Batman for quite some time, Mark Hamill, there's all these standouts, but people just don't know the voice actors.
No,
And
I know that I am not a My Little Pony fan, but
mhm,
because of Tom Zoller, who has drawn and written My Little Pony comics, he goes to a lot of My Little Pony conventions and has met a lot of the voice actors who do that, and they have a very big following. I think
mhm.
similar to anime and other, but no, I didn't. But yeah, I think you lose yourself in the story, and either the voice works or it doesn't.
Right.
Um,
And you don't think about them after you watch it. So
no, you don't. So that's good.
I'm sorry I interrupted you, Lou.
No, I'm glad you
Did you
did.
have anything else to say? I'm sorry.
Lou, anything?
No, not really. I think the only thing that kind of struck me as a bit funny was Bruce Sheridan has a raspy, gravelly voice, and I thought that in this particular movie it worked well because he doesn't sound any different than he did when he did the live action version of the show. So I
Yeah,
thought that was
Yep.
funny.
Yep.
yeah, absolutely.
Peter
Uh,
Jurassic does as well. I thought he
Mhm.
sounded exactly like Londo in this.
Yeah,
So
he did. All right, so I don't know how much we'll go through the different stories. I made just a quick notes. This is set real time on right when they were leaving the station. And what's cool is you and I, the three of us, just a couple of weeks ago talked about this episode, right?
Right.
yep,
And we talked about how well that was done, the shot of them all standing there looking at him and him saluting them. I thought the idea of him blue socks
mm-hmm,
and the lucky socks and her joking about all his socks, and that is one of the world's universal is why do we lose socks in the dryer?
yep,
Hmm.
In fact, not a sponsor of this podcast, though I wish they would be. Bomba. I don't know if either one of you have ever
yep,
gotten Bomba socks.
yep,
Um, they actually have a guarantee that if you send them a email saying I've lost one of my socks, they will send you a credit to buy another pair.
yep. And one of the reasons I support them is because for every pair of socks that people buy, they donate a pair of socks to shelters.
Yeah.
So they are incredibly cool.
Yeah, they did a whole thing about that socks are one of the most requested things in homeless shelters
Yep,
because sending time on the street, often you may not have your shoes or just they wear out. When a few years ago, God, longer than that now, but one of the hurricanes that hit Louisiana, where my mom, and my sister lived, they got a care package, and one of them was Bomba socks.
yep,
And my sister talked about how good of the socks they were.
yep.
And I said, yeah, I do think they're really great socks, and I tend to buy them. And I do get a kick out of it, though. And I know this is going to happen, but if I lose a sock, I take the picture and I do it on social media to Bomba on my sock has lost their partner. And
Mm-hmm.
within a couple hours, hey, send us a DM and your address, and we will send you a replacement pair.
Yeah, they're awesome.
Yeah.
So yeah,
So,
that scene was cute. And he has mentioned that before on the show. There was a whole thing. And then when
yeah,
Lanier said, he's not wearing socks, forget it. It's a long story. It was
yeah,
cute.
I thought it was very cute. He ends up getting unstuck in time. I thought they did a great job and Joe Stravinsky did say, we're writing this so that if someone had not watched Babylon 5, they wouldn't be totally confused. And I think they did a pretty good job of that. Any thoughts on that, Lou?
It's a little hard for me to divorce myself from that because we've just finished the series and so
Yeah,
it's still pretty fresh. I still think if you haven't watched the series that you're going to be lost because there's a lot of characters, but
yeah,
I do think he made it as accessible as possible. So yeah,
yeah.
I don't have any.
Okay.
I can't take a impartial viewpoint on that statement, but
All right.
you'd have to test that. I assume that your wife or son hasn't watched the show.
No.
If you could get them to watch the movie, maybe they could
Yeah,
tell you.
yeah. How about you, Karen?
Yeah, I watched this with my husband and he hadn't seen Babylon 5 in quite some time. He has watched the show and he hadn't really brushed up on it. Yeah, he got it immediately. And
Oh, good.
I do think that it's much better if you have even a passing knowledge of Babylon 5, but I don't think you would hate it,
Hmm.
if you hadn't seen
Yeah.
Babylon 5.
So I thought the um, I thought the scene with his dad
Mm,
was very lovely. I did hear Rance Howard, whoever was the actor who was playing his dad. I did hear and see Rance Howard, who played his dad on the show. I thought that was really nice. And I did think of the oh, what is it? The gun. What is the oh, it's Chekhov's cornfield. I did think it was Chekhov's cornfield a little bit,
yep.
like, oh, I'm gonna get lost. Is there like really just is there any of the scenes that you guys want to talk about? Let's put it that way. I'm gonna throw it open. And Karen, is there any specifics that you want to visit about?
I wouldn't mind talking about there were several scenes where people knew it was going to be their death or the end of things.
Yeah.
And I thought those were very poignant and done well. What is it? I can think of right off the top of my head 3 times
Yeah.
when like they were going to destroy Babylon 5, when John was at the end of the universe, when
Hmm.
Jakar and Lita knew that they were going to die, when John knew that he was going to die. There were
Hmm.
many of those, and I just wanted to put a little pin in that, saying I thought they
Okay.
were done and they gave me all the feels.
Okay. Lou?
Um, but I think this is a problem that's not unique to this movie, but when you have that multiverse type of stories, I find that automatically undermines any last stand scenes that you get because you know that, okay, so they died in this universe, but they're still alive in another one. So to me, that always undercuts any sort of poignancy to those types of scenes. And I think for first, if this was a movie that somebody had never seen a series walked into, I think a lot of these character deaths would be, yeah, okay, so they died
Yeah.
because I don't know them. So that works against it. I think this, what I was, and I'll just comment on the corn scene. To me, that was a very Field of Dreams inspired
Mhm.
scene. I was waiting for a scene where Sheridan jumped into the future past his death and met with Delenn. And I was
Mm.
really surprised that they didn't do that. Maybe if you have any background on why they decided not to do that, but to me that seemed like a automatic scene to do, and they never did it. So that was weird to me.
Hmm.
Um, Other scenes, I can't really. I'm not the biggest Zara. What's his name? Zarathustra.
Zathras.
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 I'm not
Zathras?
a big.
Zathras?
Yeah. I'm not a big fan of that character. So to see so many versions of him was a little bit irritating to me. So
Yeah.
I know that other people out there really like that character, but to me, he's just a little too annoying. He was actually really well drawn. I'll have to say that. And the actor that did his
Yeah.
voice did a great job. But yeah, beyond that, no, again, this was like a clip show. So if you know the characters, you're gonna like these scenes. But the problem with these multiverse stories is none of these scenarios really have any lasting impact because at the end he's gonna go back to the Prime universe, I guess
Yeah.
you could say. So
Hmm.
it's that's why I think of this as more as a clip show, and that you're just getting to revisit with characters that you haven't seen for a while.
Yeah.
And it would have been nice to mix them up a bit more, like when they had Londo and it was Susan, right, on Earth,
Yeah.
where the
Mhm.
shadows were going to destroy the Earth.
Yeah.
More scenes like that, a little more interplay with those kind of characters because they never really had a lot of scenes together.
Yeah.
Yeah, what else can I say? Technically, it was really well done. Story-wise, it's okay. It's nice to see these. It's kind of cool to see these characters again, but nothing really
And
happened. It's like that other movie we watched where, what was that one called? The
third
standalone.
space?
The
Third
standalone,
space?
was it? Yeah. Like
Yeah.
it's okay, this happened, but it doesn't have any impact on the series as a whole,
Yeah.
kind of thing. And this is very much in that vein. And it would have been nice
Well,
to have seen a scene after they had come back, or he had come back and to the right timeline
Yeah.
and time period, but they didn't do that either. And the other thing I was disappointed is that why didn't they show John's mother?
Hmm.
You know,
well, she wasn't
we've
in the
never seen
show.
her. We've never
Yeah.
seen her,
Yeah,
so it would have been a nice Easter egg
Hmm.
to have seen her.
Yeah. That's
would have been
interesting.
nice.
Yeah.
As an opposite viewpoint, you know how
Le-
I love the timey-wimey
Yeah.
stuff. Zathras again, he's irritating. He's not my favorite, and I think that they know that. They wink at it. They say, "Can I punch him now?" There's lots of references to that. But as far as he died in another universe, so it doesn't really you part of me thinks, but our base universe isn't any more important or less important than those other universes.
Mhm.
Well, then
Um,
the audiences in those universes will have the same feelings as they will about
yeah,
our
I
universe. So there you
know,
go.
I know.
Yeah.
I'm just saying I look at it from a different perspective is all. I find that they're all as important as each other.
Yeah, I just think it's a dangerous path to go down, and I think the Marvel movies have suffered because of it. Because ever since they've
Yeah.
done that, Multiverse of Madness after Endgame, the MCU has never really gotten its footing back, And until they close that down and just to go back to one universe storylines, I think they're going to have a problem with that. But that's just because I've seen this kind of plot device used in Star Trek Next Generation. There was an episode where there was like multiple Enterprise Ds, and there was universes where the Borg had won, and the other
Yeah.
ones where Picard had died, and but they all collapse, and then you get back to the one that you're familiar with. So I guess I only have enough emotional capacity to
For
get
one.
invested in one of them.
Got you.
Yeah.
That's a character deficiency on my part.
Not at all.
Was that yesterday's Enterprise?
No.
I'm trying
No.
to remember. Yesterday's Enterprise was also a timey-wimey
Yep.
thing.
Yeah. I actually
But that
loved
one,
yesterday's Enterprise.
yeah, that's a fantastic episode. But that one really works well because it constricts itself to only one alternate timeline.
Right.
Yeah.
Whereas this one's got multiple. Sim says that I don't know what that
Yeah.
episode's called, but there's
I'll look
a
it up.
gazillion enterprises.
Mhm.
And it just
Yeah, so one of the things that I not enjoyed, but I thought seeing Lita and Jakar helping John destroy the station was a good scene because we did get to see Babylon 5 being destroyed again, and I found it was poignant. The Londo and Susan one. But what made I enjoyed the most, and I believe that what JMS was hoping is that he could do a series of animated episodes in the alternate timeline where IEX did not go to Zahadum, Delenn did not go through become half human, and that the Shadow War doesn't happen. And I think that was the premise. And toward the end, where you see Sinclair is a commanding of a ship, Susan Lockley is commanding a ship, Delenn is full Minbari, and no one knows anything about the shadows, and that they could do a series of animated movies in that alternate timeline. Any thoughts about that?
Okay, side note, it was Parallels, it looks like.
okay.
Okay,
Sorry.
No
that's
problem.
okay.
More animated episodes.
Yeah, set in that universe of where the Shadow War didn't happen.
I'm torn on that. I like animated movies much as the next person. I think some of the Batman animated movies are really good, but
Hmm.
Batman is a very particular character. As Batman, he's pretty
Yeah,
stoic, and as good as animation is, unless you get photorealistic, you can't capture the expressions and the physical nuances of a character. And it all comes down to the voice acting, really, which, as Karen has pointed out, these people do amazing work. But there's still something about seeing flesh and blood people playing out characters that animated movies to this point have not been able to replicate. Once
okay.
they get to that point where they can do photorealistic animation at a cheap cost, we could see iterations of previous franchises being resurrected with these characters again. To me, obviously, the most easiest or likely one would be Star Trek. They've already done that with these fan films, like that recent one with Kirk and Spock. Like that was pretty
Yeah,
amazing. But if you could age him down to when he was like in the 60s, that would even be more amazing. And to be able to do that, to do a whole new episode with those characters in their prime, I think would be the better route to go. Unfortunately, the
okay.
technology is not there yet. A bunch of animated movies. I just don't think, even with Star Trek, I don't think there's a franchise beyond maybe Marvel and DC that would be able to carry that kind of vehicle successfully for multiple explorations. I just don't see the fan base being big enough to make it financially viable to have that kind of vision or to realize that kind of vision. It sounds nice on paper, but I think he'd be far better off to try to get a reboot, a live action reboot, than to explore animated side
Okay.
journeys.
Karen?
Yeah, overall, I agree with you, Lou. I think it would be very difficult. The budget is actually probably higher because the animation costs a lot of money. And I think I'm not sure about a reboot either. I think containing something inside that universe, there's a lot of years and other space stations that they could cover in the Babylon 5 universe. The only trouble that I see with it is that our technology has been so advanced that in order to set it back in that time frame where their future is less advanced than we are now, it would be difficult. They don't have iPads, they don't have touch screens. We we would have to just hand wave the fact that it was done in the 90s
They still read
originally.
newspapers.
Exactly, exactly. And I don't think that they would do that, that they would revert to the technology used in the original series. I think that they would update it. But again, it's set in that same universe, and it would be very difficult to do that. You'd have to set it in the future of Babylon 5 to do it right. And he shot himself in the foot there with saying that Babylon 5 was the last of the Babylon 5, last of the
Yeah.
Babylon project, because unlike Star Trek, it Babylon 5 is based around that station. And to set the Babylon 5 universe on some other station, another planet, it would be outside that Babylon 5 universe. It would be like starting a whole new franchise, essentially. Star Trek can do that because they've already had several different captains on several different enterprises, and then that allows you
Time
to take
periods.
those, right.
Yeah.
It allows you to take those characters and put them in different situations, and like Deep Space Nine and Enterprise and Voyager and that sort of thing. But in this case, the only show was set completely on this space station, and they didn't really have people that branched off that were a big part of the story. They had people that left and went off to do something, but it wasn't a big part of the story. The one I could think of would be Lita and Jakar, and of course Jakar is no longer with us, so they'd have to be an actor that could take that place. There's so many logistics involved with each iteration of how they could do it. I hate to throw water on things, but I think he'd be
No.
better off just starting a new
Mhm.
franchise and
Yeah.
not continuing on, because people would like it just the same amount they like JMS, right? They wouldn't, even if he rebooted Babylon 5, it wouldn't be the same characters as Babylon 5 is.
Yeah.
And I do think that if people understood all of that, that starting up a whole new story, I think would be a much more viable option, and they would get into it just as much.
Yeah, and I hate to throw even more water on it. I do think that this B5 universe is played out because he tried to continue the story with Crusade, and that didn't succeed either. I just think it's done. Can a reboot happen? Stranger things have happened. Whoever thought Star Trek would come back as a bunch of movies, but
Mhm.
I just think that it's played out. And why would you want to retell the story? Because you could change things, but is he going to do the same arc? I like Jesse. Maybe you have more background on exactly what he envisions the reboot would be all about. But to reboot the show to do the same story over again, but with better technology, I don't really see the point. He would. It's just better to do something new, in my opinion.
I agree.
What I can understand, and he has been coy about it, is that he would basically take the premise that Casablanca in space, there is a Babylon 5 is a station, and then would just use that as the setting to tell a new story. In other words, it would
Okay.
similar to Battlestar Galactica, like
Okay.
it is the same premise, but just told different ways.
So
And
it'd
the
be a
idea,
whole new thing, just
yeah,
still set on Babylon 5.
yeah,
Yeah.
because he thinks that he has grown as a writer and could tell better.
My whole point is, I understand that because he's setting it in a familiar setting.
Yeah,
But why not branch out? Why not do something grander than
yeah,
set them all in a can? I think it would be great for him to do like a moving vehicle like
Yeah.
a Star Trek kind of thing. It would expand.
Well, and that was actually, and I will just defend Crusade a little. That is actually the premise of Crusade is that a horrible disease that is going to kill everyone in human on Earth was released through various things, and they have X amount of years to find a cure, or everyone on Earth is going to die.
Okay.
And so they take this ship that is they talked a little bit about we're going to do a new warrior Minbari class. Gary Cole plays the captain, and their idea is to search out new worlds, new civilizations for cure. So the idea,
So that's the Crusade,
yeah,
essentially.
that's the crusade. And TNT said, yes, we want this. And then the people who took over changed everything. They kept their fingers in it, totally did not leave him alone. They made them, after he'd filmed 4 or 5 episodes, made them change the uniforms because they didn't like what they looked for. So he had to write in a story of why everyone changed their uniforms. It was, yeah, there is a whole series of books, Crusade, What Happened. So, and it absolutely was a nightmare that as much as Warner Brother for Babylon 5 pretty much left him alone, the TNT totally, and you just hear him talk about it, it was just a nightmare. So he did not get. And then every other time he's tried to do it, it's always, and he talked about this multiple years ago, that someone would come to him and say, okay, yeah, we want to try setting a new story in the Babylon 5 universe, but we've got to prove it. So I'll tell you what, we're going to give you 50 cents on the dollar. Go make the show and show that it can make us money. And
Mm-hmm.
he remembered, I remember him saying, that's it. I'm not doing this again unless someone comes to me with a full I have 100% control and I have a full budget. I'm just going to stay away.
Sure.
Yeah.
Can't blame him for that.
No. And I do think that there are plenty of people like myself who have such a wonderful love for this universe that would love to see him.
Sure.
And unlike off on a tangent today, I posted this on social media this week. There was a time when if I had heard that there was going to be a Buffy reboot without Josh Whedon, I would have been sick to my stomach. Instead, when I read that there's a Buffy remake that he's going to have nothing to do with it, I'm incredibly happy.
Right.
Yeah. Anyway,
But
yeah,
that's not because of creative reasons. That's because of personal
yes,
Yeah.
background
exactly.
issues.
Yeah, just because of that, as we talked a little bit about Neil Gaiman, there
Yeah.
is that there is this, you're in a mixture of you adore the creation and how much of your as my
And
what
you're not fond of the creator.
yeah, as my wife said, it would be like if President Obama was in the Jeffrey Epstein plane, right? That's exactly, Linda, you nailed it pretty well.
Exactly.
um
Yep.
all right, so I would, I guess because I'm a mark, I would
Don't put it
absolutely,
that way. You're not a mark.
yes, I am. By the way, we Chris just showed me there was a pro wrestler who has been very active in training new wrestlers. He did a whole explanation of where the word mark comes from and what it means, which was pretty fascinating. I would have loved the animated movies and I would have picked them up. I would have been happy to spend more time in this universe. I did not realize till after the fact that David Sheridan actually had a scene in there, but I didn't catch when or
Mm,
where. I didn't know till afterwards. There was, I think, a couple of funny lines when we're lost in time and Zathras going, can't say that. Even after all this time, there is complex things to not say lost in space. And
right.
yeah, and then one point John goes, no one listens to Sheridan.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought those were pretty good lines. Karen, any final thoughts before we move to feedback?
Mm, I don't think so. I think that's pretty much it. I don't like you calling yourself a mark. I just have to put it in there.
Okay, thank you.
I think you're the intended audience. Let's put it that way.
Oh, I
Um,
take Mark as a yes, I do. Yeah, as I go, and then I have more Bruce Springsteen shirts than I can count. And the
mm,
last show I was at, there was a shirt that I didn't even think was that attractive, but it was
but
in
you
my
had to have it.
size, so I bought it.
Yeah. Don't we all have that kind of thing
Yes, yeah.
where we like something enough
Yep.
to be
As
fixated on
a
it?
yes. So
Yeah,
yeah.
but
Mhm.
again, I think that this is as a standalone object. I think it's pleasant and easily watchable. And like Lou said, it's not something that I'm gonna watch again over and over again. I'll probably revisit it at some point because I thought it was really good. I love Bruce Boxleitner. And as you guys know, I love Bruce Boxleitner. I was sad that Marcus wasn't in it, but
Mhm.
honestly, I think they did a great job. I have a great love of animation and voice acting and that sort of thing. I guess I am a Mark as well because of
Mhm.
animation and the
Yeah.
story.
So Lou, and then I'll wrap it up.
Yeah, I think that having just completed the live action journey with the series, I think this was a nice little bow on the top of that. But as a standalone piece of entertainment, unless you're a fan, I don't really think that this is going to be on anybody's top 10 list in any way, shape, or form. It doesn't break any new ground. It doesn't bring anything new to the Babylon 5 universe. It's just like a band's farewell tour, and there's nothing wrong with that. But if you just have to have your expectations in check when you go into this because you're not going to get any major revelatory type of story.
Yeah, I get that. You're muted, Jesse.
Yes, I was. Sorry.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, one of the things that I had is, and that's why I made a point of last week when you guys were thinking about, oh, this movie's going to cover the future. I wanted to set expectations.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
was sad about that.
this, as I said, this feels like and I don't even know if an encore is the right term because often especially during this latest tour, Springsteen does a whole lot of really interesting music. And then when he comes back for the encore, it's one crowd favorite after another. Just bam, Born to Run, Dancing in the Dark, 10th Avenue Freeze Out. But this felt I was ecstatic to get it. I watched it almost immediately when I had it. I had a
Lucky
great
you.
yeah, I had a great time watching it. And then I've not watched it since. It wasn't one of
Yeah.
those. For example, last year I ended up watching Knox Goes Away, the Michael Keaton film. I don't know if
Hmm.
either one of you are aware of it. And
I'm not.
I was absolutely blown away. In fact, we should discuss it. And I've watched it three other times since.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it is to me, a brilliant film. And
So.
yeah, and I think he is just knocks it out of the park on this role.
What's it
Um,
about?
he is a hired killer, and at the
Mm,
Oh,
very beginning of the film, he is told that he has not Alzheimer, he has Alzheimer on steroids, and he
mm.
will lose all his memory in weeks.
wow.
Oh, boy.
Hmm.
And then a couple of things happen.
Hmm.
And it is how he deals with those things that happen. And as he's facing where he forgets everything, is just incredibly poignant.
Hmm.
Yeah,
I'll have to watch it.
I recommend it strongly.
Okay.
It's
From from the night shift, which was his first movie, to
yes,
this,
exactly.
that
Yeah.
is quite the
Yeah.
ride.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's he really plays it well. And Al Pacino plays like his friend and mentor who's helping him through it. And
He plays a hitman.
James
That boy,
Marston.
that's a pocket
Pacino isn't a
passer.
hitman,
Oh,
but
okay.
he is his. And then James Marston plays his son.
I like James Marsden.
Yeah, you guys watch it. Let me know if you guys want to talk about it because
Yeah,
yeah, I loved it.
Will do. I'm
All
yeah.
already
right.
interested.
I don't know if this is worth rating. We can if you guys want. I would give it, I'd give it 10 out of 10 blue socks because of how happy I was to be back in the universe. But really, the reality is it's probably a 7.5, 8 film. It's just there, but it was good to see everyone again. I
Yeah.
did get a little emotion. I don't know if you guys waited all the way to the end, but the very last
Oh yeah.
scene is
Hmm.
everyone that lost friends, and I thought that was
Yep.
beautiful.
Yep.
So, how about you
Yeah,
guys?
I like that too.
Yeah.
I would give it a 7. I really would. I think it's, as far as animation goes, it's well done. The acting was great. And I think the story, as something that doesn't really impact the original series, is decent.
Yeah. I think in the beginning was a much better standalone film. In fact, that one, when I rewatched it, I went, yeah, I should watch this more often. That's a kind of
Hmm.
nice intro to the universe.
Mm.
Lou?
Yeah, I give it 7.5 tachyons. I think
Okay.
Awesome.
it's nice for the fans. For non-fans, I think the treasures would be a lot less in, available to them.
Yeah, I think that on the Kelvin universe, Star Trek, when that film came out, could have been that was for people who didn't normally watch the original series or Next Generation.
Yeah.
It was like you could have, oh, here's my version of Star Trek. Yeah. Okay.
I did see
Uh,
that on Rotten Tomatoes, it got a very decent score in the 8s.
yeah.
Mm.
So yeah, I think it's fair.
Yeah. All right.
Feedback?
So, yeah, feedback. Karen.
Sure. We got our 2 major feedbackers back again for this time. I'll say something afterwards, but for right now, I'll just read it.
Okay.
And here's Nathan's. He says, "Hey guys, JMS more often sucks at short form, quick setup, and development. This is an example of that. I generally don't quote unquote filler episode use because an episode shows it's just an episode, but dreams, investigations into main hero actions from past episodes, visions, and travels into the past to screw and unscrew them are what filler episodes are. 95% of them are bad or uninteresting, rely mostly on I understand that reference, whereas the power of episodic shows and first 2 seasons of serialized ones sketching of the world, characters, and reliance on mystery. So, travel into the past has to be strong, either in character development and interactions, or have interesting twists on alternate paths, or have higher tension, or do something else. This movie did none of those. Sheridan appears in a new reality, has appropriate confusion, and tries to do something and find out what to do. It's either easily resolved or interrupted by another jump, and that's it. It's as interesting as hearing remixes of greatest hits. Emotional journey is non-existent. Sheridan is just pining for things, and there's no development of this line. If he has no agency till the end, I need to see the development of his emotions. For example, how resolution leads to desperation and then maybe surrender and acceptance, or his fight to return leads to different emotions. Instead, this whole story hinges on the universe being exploded out of nowhere, the cheapest steak, and then Sheridan is told once again that he loves Delenn and she loves him. Shocker. You might remember that I was irritated by the same thing when Lorian had quasi-philosophical conversations on Zahadum with him. That feeling was actually amplified by the fact that this movie came out around the same time and JMS failed with the same exact story. Other things that were bad was using the first ones, Shadows, who are counterpart of Vorlons, as the simple foot soldiers. I can understand iconic imagery, but it completely cheapened them and doesn't fit the show at all. Another common sci-fi problem is Universe saying to Sheridan, I can't interfere while talking to him, which is interference, and telling him about the power of love, which is 95% of the answer to his problem. It's a mix of terrible, persistent problems writers have. Number one, extreme subjectivism, where they think that only things that they or characters value can change the past, which is mixing up intent with consequences of the actions. Quantum mumbo jumbo fits this too. And number two, not having a good reason for things to happen, which leads to someone with power saying stuff like, I can't tell you things for reasons I can't tell you about, but they are important. And then later turns out they are not. Lou and I are both kind of chuckling here. Great
Yes.
point.
Yeah, it's like the relationship interactions between characters that are can't get on the same wavelength with each other, and the one person always says it's complicated.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And it's like their way of saying, hey, just ignore this.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And why did you put it in if I'm supposed to just ignore it, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, back to the feedback. JMS does his thing again, where it feels like the first or the second draft that got little to no feedback, or he didn't listen. Things are not thought through. There's too much direct exposition and not enough twisting and obfuscation under the layers of character motivation, problems, etc. All this movie does is set up a possible alternate universe for future movies, and I'm not excited about it with this level of writing. Also, I wanted to tell you guys how much I appreciated you talking about Babylon 5. I had great experience with you. Hope I will listen to more of your things, even though it probably won't be in time for your releases because I rarely am in the mood to watch the shows when something external regarding them happens. With regards, Nathan. Nathan, I echo that sentiment. I have had an utter joy getting to know you and seeing the show through your eyes as well.
Amen.
Yeah, I really do. I think it's so nice. And we've had really two or three good companions, to use the Doctor Who thing. And I just love that you guys have been there and given us feedback. And I'll save a little bit more because I know we've got one more feedback coming.
That's right. This is from Texas, and it looks like it's going to choke me up a little bit.
Yes.
Babylon, he says, it's all over now. What a ride it's been. Babylon 5 was my first experience with story arc series, and in my opinion, they did it best. I think the closest second is Avatar: The Last Airbender. If Firefly had gotten a fair chance, it might have taken over the top spot. Or maybe it would be one of those shows that was magic in its first season, but then lost it in the following season. In any case, it's always fun to find shows like this where someone is experiencing it for the first time. And sometimes they like it so much that they decide to watch it again and keep the show going. And that's what Babylon 5 for the second time is doing. There's also Life with Matthew doing live watch along viewings, and We Are All Kosh by Strange and Beautiful Network. So as the show ends and your listeners need something to soothe that B5 itch, there are a few suggestions. He says, I need help. Been fun getting to know y'all. Jesse, my fellow veteran of the series, starting off at around the same time I did on TNT. The two newcomers are very different in perspectives. Karen, I sometimes seem to be sharing a mind with you. Not always, but there were times when we make pretty much the same point. Lou, on the other hand, had a very different viewpoint, which I appreciate, though I did find some of the points he brought up puzzling. For example, back in season 1, he kept asking about Epsilon 3. Granted, we do find out more about the planet later, but at that point in the series, it's just supposed to be a rock in space that no one wanted, so I couldn't understand why he was so fixated on it. And then there's my opposite number, Nathan, who seemingly always had the opposite take that I did. Sorry, I'm not saying much about the road home, but I haven't really seen it enough to offer commentary, as opposed to the rest of the show that, from listening to various podcasts and reactors at different stages of progression, I pretty much know forwards and backwards by this point. Help, he says again. So I didn't feel I could offer my usual commentary and analysis. In any case, it's been fun, kids. Good luck as you head off to other ventures. I'll be here if you ever decide to return to Alliance Space, or if you tackle Mass Effect, which a lot of B5 fans consider to be Babylon 5 in video game form. I would be a little ambivalent about that if it weren't for one thing, Tennyson. And not just Tennyson in general, Ulysses specifically. That right there cinched the connection for me. So, as Dylan said, until we meet again at another time, in another place, or another life. This is the Texas on the Shock signing off until Zaveni in Valen's name. Oh,
Aw.
so nice.
Very nice.
I agree about
Yeah.
Mass Effect, by the way. It's
Texas,
really good.
check out Severance. Join us.
That's right. I think you'd like Severance.
Thoughts, Lou?
Yeah, just a beautiful letter. And my Epsilon's 3 fanaticism mirrors his fanaticism with the series as a whole, I think.
One of the points I'd bring up is that we're watching this in order to talk about it. So we're picking up on things and trying to like predict what's going to come next and that sort of thing. So we're always going to fixate on things that maybe the original audience didn't. And I think that's part of the weakness of having to podcast about something. But it's also a strength in that we catch things that people might be interested to hear about.
Yeah, and it's unfortunately when you do long form podcasts like this, and when you're doing deep dives into a show, it's just human nature to pick it apart as opposed to just sit there and praise it, because that just doesn't generate the conversation. Like, how many ways can you say, oh, that was good, that was nice, that was awesome? But you can really get into the nuances of why you don't think things work. And unfortunately, that's just human nature. I guess that will be the true mark of when we've become fully civilized, is when we only talk about the good things about something as opposed to focusing on the bad.
Yeah.
And the other thing I think, and I don't know if we do this consciously, but I also think that as you're watching a show with a newbie and a veteran, you are making, how do I put this? You are sowing seeds, asking about things, and you realize that the odds are most of them are not going to come up.
Right. Just plot
Yeah, that
constraints
just
or
thing. But
something. Yeah.
sometimes you pick up something that blossoms into a full garden, that so it's like it's going to the Vegas and putting on a $5 bet on different teams to make the Super Bowl, as we're recording on Super Bowl Sunday. And when most of the time you're gonna come up losers, or in this case, not, you fixated on something that wasn't necessarily important. But every once in a while, when you make a joke about, wow, it felt like there was more than one John, you go,
Yeah,
you know,
that's the joy of doing one of
yeah,
these
exactly.
newbie expert
Yeah.
Yeah.
podcasts.
And I would say, I don't know who made this comment, was it Nathan or Texas, but because they said that they thought that this show did it the best, a long form story arc. We've talked about why I think season 4 was rushed and season 5 was struggling to find its footing until it got past the telepath story.
Yeah.
But for my money, I still would say that Farscape has the best overarching season story. The first season is standalone episodes, but once it kicks in, I think around episode 17, from that point forward, I think that's got the best long story arc. If you haven't seen that series, I highly recommend you check it out. Though you sound like the kind of person that would have watched a show like that, both of you. But Farscape does it really good. Fringe was almost there, but I do think that season 5 was a very abrupt change in story manner, unfortunately. So that's too bad. But yeah,
Yeah, and I still enjoyed season 5 of
yeah, I
Fringe.
did too. But it's tonally, it was out of step with the rest of the series. And I'll never understand that last shot, why they just focused on Peter and didn't have Olivia in the shot too. That just doesn't make any sense to me. But that's for another discussion.
Yeah.
Anyhow, yeah, check out Farscape if you haven't. I think that has a really good over series story arc, for sure.
So, do we know if how much was Rock O'Banion influenced at all by JMS?
Rockney?
I've never heard
Yeah.
him mention it.
I don't
Okay.
know. Maybe
Because Babylon 5 was 93 and Farscape was 99.
Mhm.
yeah, it came
Yeah.
after.
Yeah. Just curious because, and I also think, by the way, I loved Alien Nation that he did before that. That was more of a procedural. I also think part of this is who you fell in love with first.
Oh, for sure,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. Because
Although I do have to say, I
Yeah,
loved other sci-fi stuff before I
yeah,
loved Farscape, but
yeah.
man, Farscape blew me out of the water big
Well,
time.
and I think what I saw Babylon 5 first, and so it I really enjoyed Farscape a lot, and I will always love Farscape because they brought us together. And I every once in a while, because I would like to do a Farscape rewatch. There's so much other TV to watch, and I
Yeah.
Yeah,
just don't.
yeah.
And I know that I'm on season 7 of West Wing. I'm about 5 or 6 episodes from finishing my full West Wing rewatch. And so I don't know, maybe I'll do Farscape as my next kind of when I don't feel like watching something current to do that. Um,
Yeah, but will you watch it straight through or will you just pick out episodes that you liked? Because that's what I do.
yeah.
There's a
Well,
lot of really bad episodes.
see, but I don't remember enough since I only watched it once. I feel like I would have to start
I,
to do that.
my recollection is most of the bad episodes are in the first season until you get to
Yeah.
episode 17.
And then
Once
there's
Scorpio
a
shows
couple.
up, then it starts
Oh
to,
my God, Scorpio's one of the
yeah,
best characters on
So
that show.
maybe I start there, do the
yeah. Then
pilot,
So
it
then
I
kind of,
mean,
cut to 17.
there's some good episodes in season
yeah,
one,
it's kind
but
of like
Hmm.
Fringe until they start doing
yeah,
serialized storytelling, but that doesn't really
Yeah.
happen until season 2. But
Okay.
man, this Fringe probably to me has the high bar for the most consistently high quality stories for I think since the the Peter episode until the end of season 3. I just think it's just like Farscape too. Like in season 2, when what's the original bad guy's name again?
Grace.
Crace. When he pairs up with him and they have the baby Moya.
Yeah.
That whole story arc
The
for that.
Talon storyline is
Yeah, wow.
so good.
It's just
Yeah.
yeah, heartbreaking stuff.
And the
Hmm.
arc that he goes through is crazy. Anyway, I don't want to talk too much
Yeah.
about
Yeah.
Farscape,
And
but
then there's just a chemistry thing. I just think that John and Aaron had the best
oh,
chemistry of any leads in a science fiction or
mhm.
series as well.
Yeah. I absolutely do remember that.
Yeah,
How much?
I'm
Yeah,
sure
I
you
do
would.
remember that. Yes.
And in a
Absolutely.
lot of different forms too,
Yeah,
because
Yeah.
yeah. The best love triangle probably in a series as
ever,
well.
Yeah.
ever. That's
Absolutely. Yeah.
right.
If someone wants to reach us, how can they? Karen?
They can reach us at jklmediareviews@gmail.com if they want to talk to us. They can also find us at JKL Media Reviews on YouTube. Please join us there. Give us a sub, and that way you'll be up to date with the things that we talk about since we don't have a blog or anything like that. Hopefully, if you joined us on this journey, you'll like us enough to check out what we do next. And I am Aleveria, Aleveria, on most social media sites, and I have a blog, allestuff.com.
Lou?
I just want to do the last bit of comments from the YouTube channel. So,
Yes,
Oh,
please.
yeah,
okay, sorry.
sorry.
Yeah, totally
So,
forgot. Yeah.
yeah, this is for the episode 22, the series finale, Sleep and Light, which, as we all know, was filmed for the end of season 4. But it works pretty seamlessly with a couple exceptions, like with we mentioned about Lanier and that. But Joel Miller says the final moments of Londo are when he and Jakar strangle each other and Veer picks up the Emperor's seal, War Without End Part 2. And we knew that, but it's just that it felt weird that this final episode didn't include that in the episode. And as Karen commented, she just wanted to see the whole scenario that prompted everything. So we never really saw the events leading up to that final moment as well. And
Directly leading up to it.
directly, and
Yeah,
why, for instance, why did Jakar have the patch back on his eye when he got
right.
that artificial
That was
eyes?
such a big deal for me.
And I guess people are, because I made the comment that I didn't think there would be any more emperors after Londo because he made the proclamation or the forecast that he would be the last emperor, and we know that Veer is the last emperor, which I really still can't see to a certain degree, but what
If
it
you
is.
remember, Major Roddenberry said that they both would be emperor.
Hmm. That's right.
And Joel Miller says that Lady Morella foresaw that one become emperor after the other's death.
There we
Yep.
go.
So we have these conflicting viewpoints. Londo says one thing, everybody else says another. There you
Hmm.
go.
Good.
As a note, Percy's owner, says, as a note, in one of the books, it is revealed that Lanier and Lita died fighting Psychors in the Psy Wars. JMS was going to talk about the rebellion of the Psychics in Crusade, but never got the chance to do that. And then Nathan says, yes, he wanted to make a telepath war TV movie like others, but I don't know why and how. And Crusade would address it because it happens after, but I doubt we would see it. And Karen says, it's great to know. We probably were going to read the books, but we definitely couldn't do it while we're spoiler free-ish. We also like the show to stand alone, as in to get the info there and not have to use the books as part of the overall narrative. If we get that, it's a good way to supplement, though. Plenty of other franchises have done it. And
Does that make sense to you guys?
yes, it does.
Okay.
It does.
And Percy says it's really unfortunate that JMS never got to tell the story in Crusade. That would have filled in the blanks that were left from B5. Fortunately, talent writers came in and wrote novels that JMS acknowledges as canon, at least some of those blanks did get filled in. And then Nathan, nah, you're quite right. Tons of fans were disappointed during the last season that it has opened the questions of the Telepath War, and Serenturi 16 years later and gave no resolution. And again, Joel says many of these things were addressed in the book. There's at least 9 books. And then we get comments about why would they destroy the station? And so Joel says it's because it would be a hazard, because it would start to drift. If it would start to drift, wouldn't fall in Epsilon 3's orbit and crash and burn? I don't know. Anyhow, CPMFM 2112 says, I always figured that Garibaldi and Sheridan were still friends, but had other fights over the 20 years. And as Karen says, I can totally see that. Those two guys were very salt and pepperish in their relationships. And then Texas says, oh,
By
go
the
ahead.
way, I really like that thought. That's a really good thought that they continue to be Michael's a pain in the butt and they discuss, and I could see that. That makes a lot more sense. That's a nice little mind canon addition that I makes me very happy.
Yeah. And as to the station being blown up, there's several possibilities put forth. Texas has a simple explanation. Earth bureaucracy decided in their infinite wisdom that blowing up the station that had been the catalyst for the alliance was the most logical decision. If JMS had given that as a reason, I don't think anybody would have complained, because of course a bureaucracy would make a decision like that.
Yeah.
And this is the one where I'm with the FMS dog. In my opinion, it was done for theatrics. Leaving it to be disassembled just not what would not have been the same, and I totally
Yeah.
agree.
It You can hand wave it, but the reality is that's a very dramatic way to end the series.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very visually putting an
Yeah,
exclamation point.
and with the
Yeah.
music, it's a very poignant moment.
Yeah. Carlton Tweedle. I don't know if you're new or not, Carlton. I think it's the first time I've seen your name, but maybe
Oh
not.
yeah, I agree.
Best SF series of all time, better than Star Trek, and I like that. Mind you, Firefly was minted also. And then the last one's a political comment. I won't get into that. But yeah, we've talked about this quite a few times, and Jesse had mentioned it previously in this episode. It's always like your first kiss, you remember that one the best. And depending on where you came in the timeline, you're going to like a certain show better than another one, and that's an interesting aspect about time that I think people should take more note of. Nathan then gets into about whether I liked Fringe better, but he didn't because they did a mid-series reset, and I get that, and I think that's just more of the same of when you came into the show for sure. And then FMS Dog says, I disagree with the rewatchability, and Jesse could probably address this one better than me and Karen. You have to watch it a second time to see the seeds planted in early shows that pay off later. To me, it's the best SF ever produced. And as I just said, depends where you come along on the timeline. And then he also wants to say thank you. He enjoyed the journey, even though with all the disagreements. And I want to say thank you right back to you and to all the other commenters. I think things got prickly at sometimes because we didn't like things that the fans loved. Then that's just the nature of, as we said, doing these kind of podcasts. Thank you everyone again for joining us on this journey, and hope that you've liked our conversation enough that you'll follow us on to other ones. And I'll bring up again, we're doing Severance right now, and boy, if you haven't seen episode 4 yet, my, this series is blowing expectations out of the water as to where it's going next.
Crazy.
Yeah.
So any final
So
words from you guys before I do my sign off?
yeah, I did just want to cover. I do feel that similar to you guys talking about how much Farscape improves on rewatchability, and I knew that I do feel like I have rewatched Babylon 5 This is probably the fifth time with you guys.
Wow.
I truly, and I skip through episodes when I'll go, oh, I don't need this one as
Mhm.
much.
Yeah.
And I tend to go, I like season one, though a lot of people say it's mixed and go, but
Hmm.
I tend to do two through four as best. And then I had not watched a lot of five like, multiple times. So I think if I had to do this, I would go first through four, skip the whole telepath thing, and then start like at the last six or seven episodes, even though you miss a little bit. And yeah, I do think one of the joys of this is seeing Jakar and Londo's journey and
Hmm.
seeing what the land knowing what things they don't, and the mystery of the Mimbari War, and that you have a hole in your mind, all that together is good. So yeah, I really have enjoyed it. And I want to agree with what you guys said. There's a lot of, when we were doing this, I did not realize there were like 15 other podcasts doing a Babylon 5 rewatch.
Yeah,
So I know that there's a lot of people in this neighborhood, and a lot of people got a lot more noise than us. So for those of you who stuck with us, thank you, and I appreciate it. I have said this multiple times, and I agree. I'm sure that Lou and Karen would agree. If only a dozen people listened to us, we would be thrilled, because it's just an excuse for us three to get together on every Sunday morning and hang out with, at least me, two of my favorite people in the world.
agreed. Same.
Amen.
I might like you guys more than I like my husband. So.
Oh my goodness.
Just
So
kidding. I am
I am
just
at
kidding.
Yeah, I am at Jesse Jackson DFW on Twitter, aka X. I am continuing to talk music on Set Listing Bruce and on Perfectly Good Podcast, Doctor Who every other week on Next Stop Everywhere. And we are in the middle of discussing season two of Severance on this very podcast. And boy, if you're not watching Severance, you need to.
Hmm.
Shout out to, I hope, no, I know she isn't, but my Sylvan Groth on my Perfectly Good podcast, the one that does the John Hyatt with
Hmm.
me. She, we finished our episode on Wednesday, and she sent me an email. Chris, who's our significant other, was just rewatching Severance season one, did not know you were doing a podcast. So he's got me watching it. So I'm going to get to hear you guys. So I'm
Oh,
like,
awesome.
yay,
Awesome.
Sylvan.
You can find me on Twitter at Lou W. Sitzma and Blue Sky as well. You can find this episode on YouTube at Lou's Reviews. Everything going forward, Media related, will be on our new YouTube channel, JKL Media Reviews, as well as you can find our email address is JKL Media Reviews as well at gmail.com. I have some other channels here, my Stephen King podcast, my writers podcast, and I think that's everything that I'm going to mention. It's been a blast. It's hard to believe that when you first start a journey like this, when you're starting episode one, season one, you go, oh my God, we're going to be doing this for years. And now here we are, I think like 2.5 years later, and we're done. And this is the end of our B5 voyage. And I hope everybody out there who takes the time to listen to this finds something of use and maybe gets a chuckle or two over some of the stupid things that we say.
Yeah, that's true.
All right. I think that's going to wrap us up. So we will see you outside the rim, and hope you come over and check out Severance with us, and also some of the other series we're going to talk about. We will be soon. We'll do Severance and one-offs. We hope to hear from you again. You know we love you. Be safe, be kind. We'll talk to you soon. Goodbye.
Bye-bye. Live long
Bye.
and prosper.
Yay.
And scene.